So, Matt, we were at Walmart the other day, which is a scary proposition in and of itself, but I saw this guy and he was throwing Stephen King novels at people.
What?
Yeah, just like hucking them at people. And I couldn't figure out why. Then it hit me. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
Hey man, I'm doing well.
Good.
We are enjoying the false fall.
Yep, here too, man.
And it's been really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we know it's going to be back to hell's front porch.
Oh yeah.
In a few days.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the last couple mornings, gotten up and 6:30, there's a chill in the air, and it's like that's kind of nice. But like you said, we'll be sweating our butts off again here pretty soon. So before we get into it, we want to say go check out the Podbelly Network at podbelly.com. We're proud to be members of the Podbelly Network, and you can find a list of shows to listen to that you may not find anywhere else. Plus, they have tips on podcasting there. If you're thinking about starting a podcast or you have started a podcast and you're like, you know, it would be nice to get some little tips on what I'm doing and stuff like that, go to podbelly.com, and they've got a little tips section there, but they also have a section where you can search podcast, and you'll see us on there, but you'll also see maybe some of our friend podcast and a whole bunch of other ones that you might not have found any other way. So go check them out at podbelly.com. While you're on the internet, after you check out podbelly.com, go over to patreon.com/graveyardtales, and you can sign up to become a patron. We have 3 different levels. And our $10 a month patrons, they get the video version of the episode. Plus, that includes some stuff that we don't cut out. Like this episode, I told Matt a joke that I could not tell on the regular episode. Well, you'll get that on Patreon. When you see our ugly mugs recording this, and it's kind of like you're here. So go over there and sign up. You also get a bonus episode a week. We try to do one a week, and our $10 and $5 a month patrons get the video versions plus the audio version. Our $1 a month just gets the audio version, but go over there, check it out, sign up. Our patrons are basically like producers of the show because we couldn't keep doing it without our patrons' support. They are what helps. Like we say in our thank you letter, you keep the tombstones polished and the caskets sealed up tight, which is a funny way of saying you help keep this junk rolling here. So now, Matt, that's all I've got. So why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
Okay, Adam. So tonight we're going to head to Pennsylvania, and we're going to take a look at the Pennhurst Asylum. Now, you know, no fancy lead in tonight, no build up. I mean, we're going to talk about one of the most haunted asylums that I've ever researched.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I know that, you know, you hear a lot, and I talk about it. I make jokes about it, about everything is the most haunted this or the most haunted whatever. I don't know that they consider Pennhurst to be the most haunted. But the stories that I was able to uncover researching this place, they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, there's stuff that I have not discovered in other research of haunted places, especially haunted asylums. You know, most of the time you get a lot of similar stories.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true.
But with Pennhurst, there's a lot that I've never seen before. And we've got an absolute incredible story to share. later on in the show about an investigation that was done with folks from Ripley's Believe It or Not. So, as with everything, especially a place like Pennhurst, you've got to understand the history.
Yeah.
To be able to wrap your head around why a place like this is so active.
Right.
So Adam, share with us the history of Pennhurst Asylum.
All right. As we always say, go check our sources down in the bottom of the show notes. You can find where we found all this information, and I'm going to be reading a lot of specifics and a lot of testimonial, stuff right from people's mouths. So if you want to see where I found it, go in our show notes, check those out. You can follow the links over there, and there's more than what I'm going to share tonight because there's just not enough time. If we did a 2 or 3 part episode, maybe we could share more, but Graveyard Tales fashion, we try to keep it to 1 episode. But check our sources, bottom of the show notes. Now, like Matt was saying, asylums are always crazy places, and Pennhurst is no exception. I'll discuss in a little bit some of the abusive and scary history that it has accumulated. Now, a former special assistant to Pennhurst superintendent said, quote, "Pennhurst was a mistake from day one, but it was a mistake made by all of us, following the dictates of the best minds of its time." End quote. So that kind of tells you right there where we're going. If that's what someone working there says, look, this was a mistake from day one. And I kind of tend to believe that. Now, some of this information I got here at the beginning came from the Weird New Jersey site. So if you haven't checked out Weird New Jersey, they got a ton of stuff on there. And if you like our stuff, you'll like the Weird New Jersey site. So go check them out. But it says Pennhurst first opened its doors in November of 1908, and due to pressure to accept not only the mentally and physically handicapped, but also immigrants, criminals, and orphans who could not be housed elsewhere, it was overcrowded within only a few years. And actually, I think it was crowded a lot quicker than a few years. But I'll be getting into some of the quotes here, and just so you know, I'm reading these. This is their words. So don't yell at me for saying any of this. Opened in 1908 as the Eastern Pennsylvania Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic, but it was better known by its popular name, Pennhurst. It was part of a national trend to segregate individuals that, quote, intellectual and developmental disabilities that were then referred to as defective, degenerate, or unfit from the mainstream society. Fearful that existing institutions at Elwyn, which is outside Philadelphia, and Polk, which is in Venango County, would be overwhelmed by what they saw as a rising tide of hereditary, quote, feeble-mindedness. Now, Philadelphia public health officials like Martin Barr, Joseph Neff, and George Stanley Woodward joined other medical professionals in persuading the state legislature to provide relief through perpetual quarantine. So over 8 decades, more than 10,500 individuals resided at the 1,400-acre facility outside of Spring City in rural Chester County. At its peak, more than 3,500 people were in custodial care at Pennhurst at one time. So
the feeble-minded, that sticks. Sticks in my craw.
I know, dude.
It's just awful.
I know, and
awful.
That's
term.
why I wanted to say, look, this is not me. This is their words from back in the day. But yeah, it hurts me as well to hear that said. The way that, and we've discussed this on other shows too about asylums and stuff, but the way people were referred to and treated then if you had anything outside of the quote norm.
Right.
And it's sad. Now, this goes on to say that like many similar facilities of the era, Pennhurst functioned almost completely independently from the rest of society. It operated its own power plant, policed its own grounds, and produced its own food. Any additional needs were supplied by a railway line that connected the campus to the outside world. The facility could operate without any interaction with the surrounding community, and that was the way that the community preferred it. So they wanted this asylum there, but they wanted it so that they didn't have to deal with these people at all. They could send them there and never have to see them or interact with them ever again. And I got a couple things here later that I'm going to talk about, and you're going to go, you sent them there for that? And
I know. These people, I know, it's ridiculous.
They got sent there for something insane and then were there their entire lives. Now, like I mentioned earlier, as time went on, the institution would be pressured to also house and hold immigrants, criminals, and orphans. So it became the solution for ridding society of all the, quote, undesirables. In fact, the institution's campus functioned as a self-contained city, like I said, and the residents would complete all the tasks necessary to run their small society. So they were put in there, and then they were made to keep it running in order to keep them away from the rest of society. It's just, I don't have words.
I know. It's insane. I laugh because it just seems so absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is the absurdity of what at the time they were doing. It's hard to wrap your mind around. So now this says that many patients at the asylum had no pre-existing mental or emotional conditions whatsoever, yet found themselves trapped in the institution for the rest of their lives, like I was saying. Upon entry, patients were sorted into categories based on, all right, here we go, more quotes, imbecile or insane, epileptic or healthy, and dental categories of good, poor, or treated. These qualifications would dictate their lodgings and care.
Epileptic or healthy?
Yep.
That's funny. Strange.
Yeah.
If you're not epileptic, you're healthy.
Apparently, yeah. And if you're epileptic, then you're not healthy, apparently.
Yeah. These things go to show how little was understood about psychology.
And
in the early 1900s.
Yep. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have the words to say what I want about it. Especially on a PG show,
Uh-huh.
Now, this goes on to say that although it was originally designed to house no more than 500 patients, by the year 1912, the institution was already overcrowded and staff members were unable to give proper care to each patient, with some abusing them. Throughout its 79 years of operations, it housed over 10,000 residents, like I said. Now, we've discussed other asylums and prisons that had become overcrowded. And when they do, the treatment of the patients or prisoners, if it's a penal colony that was overcrowded, that treatment takes a steep decline. And the cleanliness of the facility also declines. And they end up, they could sleep in their own filth, and medical care is almost non-existent. So it gets really bad. So the Pennhurst Project and Bill Baldini, they actually document cases of abuse and neglect at the asylum. And that link is in the show notes here. But we'll get into what Bill Baldini and I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly or not, but what he did and uncovered. Now, in 1968, WCAU 10 news reporter Bill Baldini documented the crowded conditions at Pennhurst in a 5-night expose that shocked and angered the public. Baldini blames society's indifference, not the staff and administrators, for allowing such conditions to persist, and urged viewers to take the initiative by contacting their state legislatures to demand change. And in a way, he's right, because they didn't want anything to do with this, the people that they sent to Pennhurst. So if they don't care, then there's no pressure put on the staff or administrators to treat them properly.
Right.
Now, granted, the staff and administrators probably shouldn't have done that in the first place, whether the public cared or not, but that's a whole nother thing.
Well, one thing that I do know is that caregiver burnout is a real thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And in the job that I do, I see it. I see it often. I see it building. And we try to do everything to cut that off. We tell folks, look, you need to go out. You need to get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go shopping, go see a movie, go visit with friends, something. You've got to figure it out, because you're cooping yourself up and taking care of another individual 24 hours a day. It wears you down physically and emotionally.
Yep.
So understanding that, take that and put it in Pennhurst, where you've got hundreds of people that you're taking care of every single day.
Yep.
In horrid conditions. You don't go into a situation like that and go, you know what? I think I'm going to abuse the hell out of some institutionalized individuals today. You don't.
Most people don't.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Of course, there's plenty of, sociopaths out there that would be like, yeah, that sounds cool. But most people don't think that way. But when you are put in that situation day after day after day, you begin to snap. It's too much. And you can only imagine that if an institution like Pennhurst was showing so little ability to care for their patients, their residents. I mean, you can't imagine that they cared for their staff any better.
No, that's true.
There's nobody checking up on the mental health of the staff that's there.
Right.
Hey, how are you doing? How are you handling all this?
Yep.
Maybe you need to take some time away. No, they're overcrowded. Things are a mess. The job is way, way more than what probably 90% of the people that came to work there expected.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that works together to lead to horrific, abusive conditions.
Yep.
I mean,
exactly.
It's a recipe for disaster. And we've seen it in other asylums as well.
Yep. You make very valid points with the burnout, and then the care from the administrators to the faculty. If they're going to take on that many people, and the conditions for the residents there are going to be that bad, the staff has to work in those conditions as well.
Right.
So they're subject to the conditions as well. Now, when Baldini asked the neighbors there basically to get involved, that grassroots effort actually worked. Now, the state allocated $21 million for the deteriorating facility, resulting in construction of the new Horizons building, which was now home to the Southeast Pennsylvania Veterans Administration. The rest of the money was redirected to pay for community programs. By the early 70s, changes were taking place not only in the care and treatment of the residents, but in the public consciousness as well. When a class action lawsuit brought against Pennhurst and the state of Pennsylvania in 1974 thrust the institution into the national spotlight, it sparked a movement to end the forced institutionalization of those with developmental disabilities. Rocked by years of bad publicity, Pennhurst closed its doors in 1987. And in a second, I'm going to talk about that that class action lawsuit. But if anything came out of the Pennhurst debacle, at least it was something that allowed the change that happened, where you didn't institutionalize people with developmental disabilities.
Yeah. Sometimes all it takes is for someone to shine a light on this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And people realize, man, that's horrid.
Yep.
You know, what could we possibly do to make this better?
Right. So thankfully, that Bill Baldini did that. Now, the next part, we've not done this before, but since the Pennhurst project that I mentioned has done all this collecting of people's stories, I think they should be told. So I want to take a brief look at some of these stories from people who actually resided at Pennhurst. Now, the first one comes from Gerald Wheaton. He's 61 now, and he resided. He's actually older than 61. He's 61 when he gave this interview here, but he resided at Pennhurst between 1948 to 1971. So think about how long he was there. Now, Gerald Wheaton was 3 years old when he and his sister Teresa were court-ordered to Pennhurst because their parents were fighting.
Good Lord.
Right. So he would spend the next 24 years keeping his head low and working at a series of unpaid institutional jobs. Gerald Wheaton said, quote, "Equal rights, that went out the window if you were in an institution. They didn't care. To them, if it was, they didn't care whether it was fair or wrong. They figured they had a right to do whatever they wanted to do to you. I figured when I was up there, I prayed out my heart. I stood out on the ball field and said, 'Father, forgive them because they have not known what they have done.'" End quote. Yeah. So he's basically saying you had no rights, and whatever they wanted to do to you, they felt was justified.
Since he was 3.
Yep. He and his sister both, because his parents were fighting. Now, another one, Mike Koval, he was at Pennhurst from 1942 to 1970. Mike Koval, this says, is an upbeat guy who doesn't let his past life in an institution keep him down. He and his twin brother were sent to Pennhurst after their father married a second time, and their stepmother did not want them living with her. The boys were 13 years old at the time.
Oh, my God.
Yep. So the dad got married. Their stepmother, the evil stepmother thing, said, "No, I don't want these kids here." So instead of the dad saying, "Well, screw you then, these are my kids," he said, "Oh, okay," and sent them to Pennhurst.
Yeah, forget boarding school or military academy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll just institutionalize these
13-year-old kids.
And that was okay.
Yep. There was nothing wrong with that.
We think, oh my God, you know, these parents, what the heck? And then you think this was perfectly fine to society at the time. This was just, that's what they did.
Yeah. Put them in the institution. Yep. Now, granted, and you know this because you have a 13-year-old, but you do want to institutionalize 13-year-olds sometimes.
Yeah.
But you just don't.
That's right.
You know?
You feel like sometimes that you need to be institutionalized.
That's true too.
13-year-old.
That's true too. Yeah. Now Rob Gorman and Bill Pennypacker were Pennhurst residents. Now Bill Pennypacker and Rob Gorman both came to Pennhurst as children with cerebral palsy. The two became fast friends and spent much of their time together on the ward. In 1980, they moved together to a group home in Collegeville. Now, it says, quote, I was court committed to Pennhurst because my sister couldn't take care of me. We were both in D1, Devon Building, first floor. On the ward, we had some people who fed us too fast because they had a lot of people at the time. They were always a lot of people that needed care. We just watched TV. No one ever talked to us too much. I did not like it there at all. I am not too keen on talking about it because it upsets me sometimes, said Rob Gorman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there again, you had two people with cerebral palsy, and they institutionalized them instead of, and then they, like he said, they fed them too fast because they didn't have time because they were overcrowded. Mm-hmm. And all this, and nobody took care of them. They just stuck them in front of a TV and they wasted away, basically. Now, I want to end my part here, Matt, with two things. One, I want to look at patient treatment, and then the other one, I want to look at that. It ties into patient treatment, but look at that class action lawsuit. So I'm going to preface this. This does get a little brutal at points. So be warned. I'm not going to go into graphic detail, but there is going to be some mention of what they did to some of these patients, and it does get kind of brutal. So if you want to skip ahead to Matt's part, that's fine. But if you sit through it, I warned you. It says that injuries were very common at Pennhurst, especially due to the lack of staff. In January 1977, there were 833 minor and 25 major injuries reported. On January 8th, 1975, a patient was reported to have bit off 3/4 of a patient's earlobe while the other resident was asleep. Not too long after this, another patient was reported to have pushed a resident to the floor so hard that it resulted in the other patient's death. So,
good Lord.
If you do have people there that have developmental disabilities, and they are violent disabilities, they have to be kept to themselves or watched when they're in with other people that are more mild, I guess, in the disabilities. But they had so many people they couldn't watch them. So they had these people with violent tendencies in with these others. And it could have been what they deemed, quote, normal people at the time, but were institutionalized that just were mean people. And then treating these people with developmental disabilities poorly, pushing them down and stuff like that. This goes on to say that despite the high number of patients requiring special care, the state provided the institution with meager funds. There were very few doctors, nurses, and orderlies available to meet the patient's needs. Many patients spent their days and nights trapped in metal cribs in horrid conditions. Others were so desperate for human contact that they went to great lengths for attention by injuring themselves or even smearing themselves with their own feces in hopes of a bath. Cruel punishments were common at the facility. Overworked staff responded to unruly patients by drugging them into submission or chaining them to their beds. Other residents were isolated for such long periods of time that they regressed and lost their will to speak, fight, or even live. One particularly harsh rule chastised patients for biting. When a patient bit someone the first time, he or she was reprimanded. But if it happened again, the patients were sent to a dentist who would pull all of their teeth. Thousands of teeth were removed in a rusty dentist chair that still sits in the tunnels beneath the Pennhurst complex.
God, man, it jumps, right? It goes from don't bite to we're going to yank all your teeth.
Yeah. I mean, there was there's no like progression of, now you should never get to, I'm going to take all your teeth out.
Right.
But there was no progression of punishment, you know? It's like a slap on the wrist to, oh my God, we're one of the worst things we could do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you know, let's find some middle ground here.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Now, this next part comes from the Pennhurst Memorial and Preservation Alliance. And these are excerpts from the facts section of the federal district court case Halderman versus Pennhurst State School and Hospital. And they demonstrate the horrific conditions, lack of funding created at Pennhurst. This says it was only through the dedication of the overworked staff, it seems, that any humanity at all was afforded to this institution. So we have talked about how poorly the staff treated the patients, but there were good staff members there that tried to help out and were probably the only reason that it didn't get worse.
Yeah.
So some of these excerpts include, point 1, there were no psychologists on duty at Pennhurst at night or over the weekend. Thus, if a resident has an emotional crisis, he or she may go without treatment until the next morning or until the weekend is over. And, you know, some may say, well, that doesn't seem like a bad deal. But if you need it and there's not help there, that is a bad deal. What do you do for the weekend until the psychologist shows up? You know, they chain you up.
Bed.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Next one says, at Pennhurst, restraints are used as control measures in lieu of adequate staffing. Restraints can be either physical or chemical. The physical restraints range from placing the individual into a seclusion room to binding the person's hands or ankles with muffs or posies and binding the individual to a bed or a chair. Chemical restraints are usually psychotropic, i.e. tranquilizing drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So because they were so short-staffed, they couldn't handle the, quote, unruly patients well, so they would bind them in one way or another. Seclusion rooms, next point. Seclusion rooms have been used to punish aggressive behavior. One 18-year-old individual spent 6 consecutive days in a seclusion cell in 1974 for assaulting a Down syndrome resident. Next point from this court document. Often, physical restraints are also used due to staff shortages. An extreme example is a female resident who, during the month of June 1976, was in a physical restraint for 651 hours and 5 minutes. For the month of August 1976, was in physical restraints for 720 hours. During September 76, was in physical restraints for 674 hours, 20 minutes. And during the month of October 1976, was in physical restraints for 647 hours and 5 minutes.
Good God.
Can you imagine? That's worse than prisons in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
I just, to be put in physical restraints for that long. The next point says psychotropic drugs at Pennhurst are often used for control and not for treatment. At the rate of drug use on some of the units in it is extraordinarily high. So, yeah, like I said, it's for restraint, not to help the patient. The next point says the physical environment at Pennhurst is hazardous to the residents, both physically and psychologically. There is often excrement and urine on ward floors and living areas that do not meet minimal professional standards of cleanliness. Outbreaks of pinworms and infectious diseases are common. And if you got feces around, you're going to get some parasite like pinworms or something.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the last one I got here says, in addition, there is some staff abuse of residents. In 1976, one resident was raped by a staff person, One resident was badly bruised when a staff person hit him with a set of keys. Another resident was thrown several feet across a room by a staff person, and one resident was hit by a staff person with a shackle belt. On each occasion, an investigation was conducted and the staff person responsible was suspended and or terminated. But I know that was brutal to get through. I know that there was some tough things in there. But I felt it needed to be said along with the quotes from the actual patients of Pennhurst to kind of set up the activity that we have now that Matt's going to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, we have plenty of it. Now the Shore Paranormal Research Society, or SPRS, have become the official paranormal investigators for Pennhurst Asylum. Now, the SPRS is in Ocean County, New Jersey. They're a team of trained individuals whose sole purpose is to find the truth behind claims of paranormal activity. Now, according to Jim Ansbach, who is the group's founder and case manager, Pennhurst is loaded with this kind of activity.
Mm-hmm.
This group has conducted several large-scale investigations of Pennhurst's many buildings and documented a variety of evidence of paranormal activity, including photos, videos, recordings of voice phenomena, and personal encounters with spirits. Now, among the recordings, now these are not EVPs, which we'll get into some of those, but these are just the recordings of the sounds of disembodied voices. Okay? They have recordings of hearing voices saying, "Go away, I'll kill you, we're upset, and why'd you come here?" So they even said that there was an unknown male voice that says, "I'm scared." And then a female voice will ask, "Why won't you leave?" Okay. There are other reports of slamming doors, footsteps, and sounds of vomiting coming from otherwise empty rooms. Now that sounds of vomiting, that's a new one on me. I've not ever seen that.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. That's new. I've not heard, even in like hospitals where you would expect there to be sickness like that. We don't see many reenactments or anything like that of somebody getting sick or being sick.
Right. And, that's a very distinct sound.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell when that's going on.
Well, it's like that joke. You should just make all alarm clocks the sound of a dog throwing up because nothing will get you out of bed quicker.
That's right. That's right. The only thing that make you move faster is a kid throwing up that's sleeping in your bed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, Katie, bar the door.
Yeah.
But visitors to Pennhurst commonly report the sounds of children's voices and laughter throughout the complex. There have also been reports of old medical instruments being moved or even thrown, and doors slam routinely despite rooms being totally empty. And understand this, Pennhurst, the campus is quite large. We're not talking about a single building facility, even a large one. We're talking about an entire campus of multiple buildings that were constructed over the years to
a small city.
Yeah, the growing number of residents. Yeah, it looks like a small city. And it kind of ran that way.
Mm-hmm.
So when folks go and do these investigations at Pennhurst, it's not, we're going to spend the night right here in this building and capture everything we can, because there's so many buildings. I mean, it would take nights and nights and nights of this to investigate the entire area, but they have done it. Pennhurst has the distinction of having the longest continuous paranormal investigation that lasted, I think, 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
That's a long time. And you can actually go online. You can view it. You know, they made a television special out of it. But you can go and watch it, and it doesn't take 2 weeks. It's like, it's like a Ken Burns documentary, you know? It's like,
yeah.
Get it on DVD. Get all 112 hours of Pennhurst investigation now.
13 DVDs.
Yeah.
Well, before you go on, one thing that I didn't bring up, you said there are voices that say, "Why did you come here? Why are you staying here?" That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Because if you're stuck there, if your spirit is there, you're going to try to keep other people from coming there. And you're not understanding why people keep coming to this place that tortured you.
Right. You know, why would you be here? But I would imagine, too, that was a common question.
Yeah, true.
That was asked among the residents there. You know, why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially for the people that they didn't seem to have a disability.
Yeah,
that
they got
would
put
have
there because
necessitated them being there.
Yeah, their stepmom didn't want them.
Right.
So,
you know, so I imagine that was something that was heard quite often.
Yeah, probably.
But let's take a look at them. It's at some of the activity that occurs in the different buildings. Now, in the Quaker building, people have reported numerous shadows that manifest and then dissipate at will. So I assume when they say that term at will, I wonder, is it just they're thinking that they're looking at something that is intelligent? You know,
that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. We just see some shadows.
Right.
You know, it's the shadows come when they want and they leave when they want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these shadows include what appears to be a small female child with long black hair, a hunched over presence with long dangling arms, and the upper portion of bodies looking over or around obstacles. You know, these are all the different shadows that have been reported there.
Right.
Doors and rocking chairs have moved without anyone being near them. Investigators have reported being shoved from behind, one in particular stating that it was hard enough to leave a deep red mark on the small of their back.
Oh, wow.
How hard you got to push somebody to leave a red mark?
Yeah, that's like a punch or a slap.
Yeah. And even then, how much energy would it take for a spirit to do something like that?
Right.
Yeah. One investigator was scratched on the arm by an unknown object when they weren't close to anyone, anything, or near any walls. Objects have been reported being thrown in the basement, such as a pry bar, a brass fixture, and various other objects. Multiple EVPs as well as EMF spikes throughout the building when there is no electricity supplied to any building there. Okay? Psychic medium Sharon Pugh has felt multiple energies, including a possible demonic force or at least a past life that wasn't a very nice person. Okay? This all occurs in one building at Pennhurst. This is inside the Quaker building.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's more than some of the haunted houses we have investigated or we've researched.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay? It really is.
And this is one building in this complex that has all of this going on. Okay. But other buildings have their own situations as well. The Limerick Building. Inside the Limerick Building, people have reported seeing the apparition of a woman in an old-style nurse's uniform, and that was observed by a firefighter, a police officer, and a Marine. Okay? People of high integrity, you would assume.
Right.
That reported seeing this apparition of a woman in a nurse's uniform. Multiple EVPs have also been recorded here. Now, the Devon building, which Adam mentioned earlier, there have been reports of mysterious sounds, and also multiple EVPs have been recorded. The Mayflower building, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. The Mayflower building, investigators have reported sightings of shadow people, and some have reported being touched. Now, one of the asylum hosts, Ashley McIver, relates a story of hearing a music box playing that could be heard throughout the entire building. The sound seemed to be coming from the third floor, yet no source could actually be found. So it wasn't like an old radio was up there left on. There certainly wasn't a music box or any other reason for that music.
It's not like it's a PA system because there's no power to that building.
Right. Yeah, no power. Now, the Tennicum building, one investigator reported feeling something touch their leg, and has also, many old EVPs have also been recorded. Now, in the Philadelphia building, there have been loud sounds and voices heard coming from the building. Investigators, on one occasion, surrounded the building and entered it via the tunnel system, only to find that there was no one in the building and they couldn't have fled without being seen. So in the Philadelphia building, the disturbances are so loud they can be heard from outside the building.
Yeah, and I think it's cool that they kind of snuck in another way just to check, because if it's people and they're pulling a prank, they'd expect you to come rushing in the front door.
Right.
So it's cool that they kind of snuck in, but I can't believe it's so loud you hear it from outside.
And Adam, you touch on an interesting point about there being people in there. Locals will say that sneaking into to Pennhurst was kind of a rite of passage for high schoolers. These kids looking for, either some type of hazing ritual or just you won't do it. Kind of a I dare you to go. But there's also been some evidence that there has been occult activity in there. They even mention in some articles evidence of satanic worship. There is tons of graffiti in the building and in the buildings, and that is what leads them to believe this. They said that the Eye of Horus is a common one. But there's pictures of, demons, goat-headed individuals. There's a lot of graffiti that says things like "Welcome to Hell," those kind of things. So, teenagers get in there and they do stupid stuff. Even if they're doing it just to make it look like there was some occult activity going on. But there have bound to have been people that go in there thinking they can absolutely, use a Ouija board.
Yeah.
Or have a seance, try to communicate. And what some of the hosts have said is you get in there and you start poking around and you start trying to summon something. Maybe you do. And you have no idea what you're doing or what you could possibly summon.
Right.
So, I had not ever considered that. I mean, we've talked about you don't mess with that kind of stuff because you don't know what you could bring.
Mhm.
But if you're going to a place that is so active like Pennhurst, you're just inviting trouble by doing something like this. Whether it affects you in the long run or not, you're just adding, more of an entity to a place that's already crammed full.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, none of us really know how Ouija boards work, and people will claim they do and all this, but we don't know exactly how that works. So by doing that there, like you said, a place with so much activity, are you increasing the energy at that place and allowing the spirits or negative entities that are already there to become more powerful, to where they can throw stuff and leave welts on people and hear the noises from outside? Could that be adding to it? Or, like you said, are you bringing something else into this place that is making it even worse?
Yeah.
And there's a reason why Ouija boards don't come in this house.
Yeah. Well, think about this, Adam. What if maybe it's not you're adding to the energy, but what if activity like this, like going in there and trying to have a seance and communicate with something, what if that doesn't add to the energy, but it focuses the energy? It brings it to a point to where maybe you've harnessed enough energy that something could cross over.
Yeah.
It's a thought, but I think with a place with as much energy as Pennhurst appears to have, I don't know that anything aside from going in there and doing a human sacrifice is going to add to the negative energy that's already there. But it certainly, at least in my opinion, could focus it down to where it's all built up in one location, and who knows what could happen at that point.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Now, the administration building on the Pennhurst campus has been investigated, and multiple voices have been heard at various times. There's been EVPs recorded, and they even have an EVP of what sounds like a toilet flushing. Okay. Which that's another new one. I've not ever heard that.
No.
But it's important to know that building has no running water or bathroom fixtures. Okay.
That's weird.
So not only is there no running water, there's not even a toilet.
Which makes me wonder where that sound came from. Like, because you would think, okay, if we got a bathroom sound, then that may be a stone tape recording from an event that happened in the bathroom years ago. But if there's no bathroom facilities, why in the world is there a toilet flushing sound?
Exactly. Where is that coming from?
Maybe it's a growl or hiss by something that we don't hear the full spectrum of, and so it sounds like a toilet flushing to our ears.
Yeah. Now, in the Hershey building, one investigator reports having heard a female child's voice on the third floor. And we talked about, how horrible it would have been to have been a child growing up.
Yeah.
Through your development years in this situation. And that's going to leave a mark. I mean,
sure.
It's just going to add to the negative energy that's already there. All right. So I teased this earlier. I told Adam this before. I have not given him the opportunity to read this because I wanted to get his reaction and his take on it. But during a tour with correspondents from Ripley's.com, which is affiliated with the Ripley's Believe It or Not organization, Ashley McIver, who I mentioned before, is one of the asylum hosts. she tells a story about one of the more active spirits. And this particular spirit is known as the King. Now, Ashley says the King was a maintenance worker here from the 40s or 50s. And that was his domain. The boiler room, the maintenance area, that was where he was.
Sure.
He was not he was not very well and himself, and he didn't treat the patients well. Sometimes people report smelling cigar smoke down in the basement, and he is known to come across EVPs. He's appeared as a shadow figure, and he's even been known to touch people. And they say he is not a nice spirit, but he does like the ladies. So not in a good way.
Yeah.
He tends to harass female visitors, touch, push, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the staff at Pennhurst are well acquainted with the King. But they're not certain if they're experiencing poltergeist activity or if it's something more demonic. Now, Ashley confides that nothing has ever escalated past him just messing with people. He's come across with a creepy laugh. He's shared his name, but he's even had full conversations on older EVPs. So, usually when you are listening to EVPs after the fact, you might get short, quick answers to questions.
Yeah.
But apparently the EVPs that have been recorded from the King, they answer questions and then there can be follow-up.
Oh, wow.
And the answers seem to be intelligent.
And that's abnormal.
Yeah. It's certainly not a stone tape type
No.
incident. This would be an entity, whether poltergeist or demonic, who knows? But it's definitely something that is intelligent and realizes that you're there and is willing to interact. Now, during this particular investigation, something pretty amazing happened to this crew. Having already heard Ashley's story about hearing a music box, the team reportedly began to hear music in the building. Now, they were rushing to find the source, and they raced upstairs to the second floor and noticed that the music was becoming louder. Okay? So they're moving, and the music's getting louder, filling the entire building. Now, they were all hoping to find something tangible, something there that would be playing music or that a spirit could be using to play music. And as the team hurried up another set of stairs to the third floor, the music got at its loudest. Once they stepped foot on the landing from the stairs to the third floor, it stopped. So they've rushed up there, and as soon as they get close enough, it stops.
Yeah.
But later on, the crew heard the music again, this time in the basement. Now, like the above floors, no audio source could be detected. And attempting to follow its source in the basement led to sudden stops and variation, as if something was attempting to lure the party into the building's deepest, darkest depths.
When you were talking about it getting louder as they were walking, that's what I thought. I was like, that sounds like a lure. It sounds like them trying to bring them somewhere.
Yeah. That's pretty shocking.
Yeah.
Okay. If every aspect of this story is true, I have no reason to believe that it's not. It's incredible. I mean, at least for this portion of the campus, which this is the Mayflower Building. I've never researched anything quite like this, where you're seeing, like Adam said, a lure, essentially. Come closer. Most of the time, it's a lot of go away. Yep. I don't want you here. I'm going to make all this noise. I'm going to do everything I can to drive you away. But having played this music, and this music being on the third floor, and bringing that crew up there to the third floor, and then them later hearing it in the basement,
it sounds demonic to me.
It does. It absolutely does. And I know we hate when people just automatically say, it's a demon. That's a demon. But this sounds like demonic activity.
It does. It does.
So, and we've talked about how a demon would wind up in a place like this. That if you think about it, a demon would feed on that kind of negative energy.
Yep.
And it may have been there for decades.
It may have caused a lot of it too.
It's very possible. I mean, all that pain and despair and mental anguish. Be like a playground for a demon based on what we believe that we know about demons.
Right.
And again, we don't have any evidence of that either, but we have a lot of stories and strange occurrences and entire families who have been just absolutely shaken to their core because of what is assumed to be demonic activity.
Right. And like I mentioned before, the when you have that much negativity, that much pain in an area, it kind of sticks to the walls, like that paranormal sludge, like I've called it before.
Right.
And that's going to feed any demonic activity that maybe wasn't there before. Anything around will go, oh, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
And enjoy living there. Like when the Addams family would dust and they just blow dust everywhere instead of actually dusting to get the dust off. It's kind of what it reminds me of, this paranormal sludge just going everywhere. And that's what the demons want.
Yeah. Yeah. And who knows? You're just speculating. If people have gone in there and tried to perform some occult rituals, they could have opened a portal.
Yeah.
That just allows, these kind of entities to roam in and out. I don't know. All bets are off with this place. It could be absolutely anything. And it sounds like it's almost everything.
Yeah. That's true.
Anything you could fathom to get out of a haunting, you're getting it here. And it's just incredible to me. Like I said, I've never researched a place quite like this. With this much activity this frequently. It's pretty amazing. So this is a point in time where we ask you guys, what do you think? Do you think Pennhurst Asylum, with all of its, bad history, is just a playground for spirits, ghosts, demons, poltergeists, you name it, whatever?
I tend to, yeah.
I do too. But let us know what you think. I mean, definitely if we've got listeners in that area. Spring City is where Pennhurst is, I believe. If you live in that area, or if you are familiar with it, maybe you've driven by it, maybe you know some stories, please let us know. Share them with us, and the best place to do that is in our Facebook group. Just go on Facebook, search Graveyard Tales. You'll find it. it's a safe place to share these stories. Nobody's going to make fun of you or call you a loony. Everybody just wants to hear these cool stories, and we've had listeners, tons of listeners share their experiences in the group. We've had many listeners that they didn't feel comfortable, and they sent them to us directly.
Right.
We've got some listeners with some incredible experiences, that we don't share with you guys, just out of being courteous to them. But understand that this group is private. Your neighbor, your boss, whoever, they're not going to see that unless they're a member of the group. And if they are, then hey, now you got something new to talk about with someone. Okay. But don't forget to go and check us out on other social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram. And you can check out our website, which is graveyardpodcast.com. And on our website, you can listen to the show. You can find links to purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise, and you can become a patron. And we always take time to thank everyone who has donated to the show. You have no idea how much it helps. Recently we've had some equipment fail. We've had some things kind of going bad that we've had to replace, and that stuff costs money. And thanks to your donations to Adam and I's effort, we've been able to do that and keep Graveyard Tales going strong. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. It brings us up the charts. It makes it easier for people to find the show, and it brings more folks into the graveyard. So, for Adam and myself, until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.